Welcome back to my channel and happy Halloween. In today's video, we'll be doing an in-depth polygel tutorial for this spooky look. I'll be showing you how I do application, shaping, prep, and nail art for both hands, including my non-dominant hand, so stay tuned. All of the products I'm using today are from my brand. You can shop at doperthanyournails.com. The link is in the description. You can use code YouTube to save 10%, and we're actually having a Halloween sale right now, 15% off site-wide. So if you use code YouTube at checkout, you'll actually save 25% total. This is a great time to grab our Halloween collection with these cat eyes and solid shades. These are great year-round. We are also preparing for our winter launch on November 11th, and the sale does run through Saturday night until the end of the day. So let's get started on this nail set. We are starting off with our nail prep, and as I mentioned, I will be showing how I do the process for both hands. I won't be showing every single finger, but I will be showing a few on each hand, so you'll get a sense of how I do prep, application, and shaping with my non-dominant hand. But for now, I'm just starting with my dominant hand, so just kind of like my normal prep, and I'm pushing back the cuticles, trying to be as thorough as possible. I had quite a bit of cleanup to do. As I always say, I am being thorough and trying to get into those corners, but still being gentle. If you are experiencing lifting, I would definitely slow this step down. Next, I'm using a 240 grit sanding band. This is a very fine grit sanding band. I'm using it at a low speed, about 4 to 5 RPMs, and going over the surface of the nail. We're not trying to overfile here, but we are just trying to make sure we get into that cuticle area just to clean up any excess and remove the shine. I had a little bit of base coat and product from my last set left over, so this was a great way to clean that up. I feel like this helps with retention a lot and make sure that everything is nice and clean. Now we are just repeating the same step on the other hand using our non-dominant hand, so using that cuticle pusher. It's just gonna be a little bit more awkward and take a little bit more time. But really, there is no magic trick. You just really need to build up the muscles in your opposite hand, which is going to come with time and practice. That's really why it's so much harder for us sometimes to do the opposite hand, because we just aren't used to it and the muscles just aren't as, built up and are just weaker in that sense of doing those techniques. For the E-file, I'm using a little bit of a lower speed, and I'm just trying to be very gentle, not apply too much pressure, and just really work on top of that nail when it comes to removing the shine and cleaning up any excess product. Now we are going to get our nail tips ready. So I found these nail tips on Amazon. I wanted to try a different length and shape. This is definitely probably the shortest set I've done, but I thought this would be a great chance to try out a new shape and length, and so I found these half cover tips. They are shorter than what I'm used to, as I said, but I think that they're gonna grow out really nicely, and I love how the set turned out ultimately. I would consider this like a short to shorter medium almond length, but I'm just sizing out my nail tips. I'm making sure they fit sidewall to sidewall. Do my best to also glue these down lower just so I get a little bit more length out of them. But really what we're doing is making sure that the tips fit nicely from sidewall to sidewall without having to press down or apply too much pressure. If you're in between sizes, it's better to go with a bigger size and file down. This is an example of something that's too small. And then we're gonna take our Young Nail Swipe. This is a dehydrator, so it's gonna remove any oils and basically make sure that nail plate is pretty much free of any dust, oils, or anything that would prevent the product from sticking. So this is a good sign that your prep is good when you see the nail kind of turn cloudy like that. Basically, with nail enhancements, you want your nails to be dry. You don't want them to be oily. You want them to be basically what the product says, dehydrated, so the products stick better. Now we are taking our brush-on glue. All of these prep products can be found in my Amazon storefront, by the way, in the description. I'm just applying a little bit of product at the center and then spreading that out, trying to follow the knuckles just so the tips are not crooked. If your fingers are a little bit angled, you can glue them on this way, even if they look a little bit off. Ultimately, when you apply all of the product, they will look more like your finger is straight, if that makes sense. So I'm just holding down the nail tips for 10 seconds, and I'm also holding from the sides so that I'm making sure that they are nice and secure all around. And now I am going to blend the nail tip with the natural nail. I'm just keeping it pretty minimal, but I'm also removing the shine from the free edge of the nail tip and making sure there's pretty much a seamless transition from the natural nail to the nail extension. Careful to not overfile, but this is also a good reason of why you want to make sure your nail tips fit nicely, that there's kind of a seamless transition between the two so that you have a really nice cohesive shape overall. And we can also go ahead and reshape the free edge a little bit just to make sure it's perfectly round and we can taper it in a little bit. Now we are going to apply our primer. So this is Young Nails Protein Bond. This is a very popular product. It is definitely one of the best primers out there. So we're just applying this to the natural nail, and it again also serves as kind of an anchor to help your product stick to the natural nail. Once that air dries, we are applying a gel base coat to the entire nail and fully curing in our lamp. After that's fully cured, we want to make sure we do not remove the sticky layer. This again is also a foundation and anchor for our products to stick. Now we are just repeating those steps to the other hand. So I'm just using my dehydrator here, and you can see it took a little bit longer to kind of show that cloudy effect because your dominant hand, your right hand, or whatever you normally use is probably gonna have more oils and stuff on it. That's my theory, just because I think we use it more often. So the prep is even more important on the hand that you use more often. Now we are repeating the same steps of sizing out the nail tips and making sure they fit sidewall to sidewall without having to apply too much pressure. And I'm again doing my best to glue them a little bit lower down just so I get some more length. And again, you'll want to make sure that you are not using a nail tip that's either too big or too small. But again, if you're in between sizes, you can definitely size up and file down. We're gonna take our same brush on glue and apply that on the inside. Try to concentrate most of the glue at the center, and then we are going to go ahead and hold down for 10 seconds with a good amount of pressure. Really just try to make sure you are not moving the nail tip or hand around too much. I try to stay very still during this step and just apply really as much pressure as I can, and this glue works really well. You can also hold down from the sides just to make sure the two kind of edge pieces are also very secure on the natural nail. We're also going to go ahead and repeat that on the rest of the nails, just gluing down and holding down with pressure. I always get the question of, do you have to use dual forms with polygel? And the answer is absolutely not. You can use whatever you'd like. I personally use polygel as an acrylic alternative, so I like to use half cover tips. I think it does give you more of that acrylic look, and it's just easier to control the product on top and kind of build up the structure of the nail properly. And as I mentioned, I did get these nail tips off Amazon. They are probably not the highest quality because a few of them did have some trouble gluing on, which I've noticed some nail tips this just differs, and it's probably just based on how maybe the type of plastic that's used or whatever it may be. But if you're having that problem, just use your sanding band and very lightly etch the inside of it. I think the plastic might just be, I don't know what it is exactly, but I just noticed some nail tips don't glue on as well. So this one can have that issue. I did have that for a few nails, so I just etched the inside of it before gluing them on. And as I mentioned earlier, when you're using your non-dominant hand, it can just feel a little bit awkward. So the more stable that you can make your hands, as you can see, I'm kind of using my thumb here, the more stable you can just make it for yourself, the easier it'll be. But with time and practice, you will become more used to it, but you kind of just got to go through the motions and, you know, give it a try. And who knows, it might even turn out better than you think. Sometimes my nails with my non-dominant hand turn out better, and I think it's because we have to be more intentional about what we're doing and really slow down like our technique. So again, I'm just taking that fine grit sanding band and making sure that the natural nail is flush with the nail tip. These are pretty flush, so there wasn't a ton of filing to do, but I do like to just remove the shine and just make sure that there's also that anchor for the base coat and everything to stick to. And again, trying to make sure there's that nice transition. You can just see, like, if you kind of imagine this, you know, with polygel or any nail enhancement on top of it, you can see the application and shape is going to fill out very nicely. If it was too small or too big, the, you know, edges of the nail tip would extend out too far or be too tapered in, and it wouldn't look like the shape that we're trying to achieve. So that's another kind of mental tip that I try to keep in mind when I'm, you know, trying to figure out what nail tip size to use, or just, you know, filing my nail tips for application. We're going to take that 100 over 180 grit hand file and just round out the free edge. A lot of times with these plastic nail tips, even full cover tips, you know, there's a little bit of, you know, excess product hanging off at the edge, a little bit of plastic hanging off, whatever it may be. So you just kind of have to ever so slightly just refine it a little bit. And even with pre-shaped tips, this is definitely a good habit to get into. The more kind of clean you can make your nail tips look, Before application and shaping, you're just gonna have a much easier guide to follow. And as you can see, it is awkward shaping with your opposite hand, especially when filming, but I'm just trying to do the best I can, and here's how everything looked. And we're just gonna go ahead and use our protein bond once again as the primer for the natural nail. Just gonna use that on the natural nail. I don't use it on the nail extension. It's really meant for the natural nail itself. And same thing with the gel base coat. We're gonna apply a full layer to the entire nail. Some like to do it only for the natural nail. Personally, for me, I don't mind using the excess product to apply it to the entire nail, just to make sure that I have that backup and have that layer of base coat over the entire nail. I don't feel like it hurts, but if you are trying not to use as much product, I have heard, there are plenty of nail techs that don't do it that way and have good retention, so you could definitely experiment with that part if you wanted to. So we're just gonna go ahead and apply that to all 5 nails, cure in our nail lamp, make sure it's fully cured, and do not remove the sticky layer as I mentioned before. So we're ready to start our application. So we're getting our slip solution ready, which is 70% isopropyl alcohol, and I'm getting our brush ready, which is from my brand. This is our Polygel brush that you can purchase on our website. This brush head is a lot bigger than you find in most Polygel kits and denser, so I feel like it makes application a lot easier. It has cut down my application time significantly, and it's just so much easier to maneuver the product. Those tiny brushes really do not make it easy to apply the polygel, especially if you're doing longer nails and extensions and things like that. So this is the liquid that we use periodically throughout our application. We just dip our brush into it as needed to help mold the polygel, but you want to make sure your brush is not oversaturated. So I usually dip my brush in and then drain a little bit out, just so I have just enough on there to help mold the polygel. And here are the polygels that we are looking at today. These are our neutral colors from my brand. I'm gonna use Wispy Peach. I've been very into the Wispy Peach lately. It is definitely a fan favorite, definitely one of our most popular shades. It's the 3rd one from the left. It's just like the perfect neutral shade. It's a very clean and like subtle look. It just looks good with any set, and I've been loving it lately. So we're gonna go ahead and use a bead of that. I'm gonna use the application technique today. I guess you could call like applying in layers, because honestly, I'm not used to working with the length like this. So this was a little bit of a refresher for me, but I ended up doing 1 layer here, and I'm just using the brush to tuck that into the cuticle area and then kind of drag the rest down. So you can apply your polygel in beads, kind of like you would traditionally with acrylic, or you could do layers like this where you are working from top to bottom. You apply 1 layer and then you cure, and you apply your 2nd layer kind of where needed, just to add a little bit more coverage. This is a very buildable color. It's a very natural looking color. So if you wanted something very subtle, you could definitely just do 1 layer, but I wanted to make it just a little bit more opaque. So I did a very 2nd thin layer on top of that after I cured the 1st layer. So this is another application technique and method that you could try if you are a beginner, or if you are struggling, or if you're finding it hard to actually like build the beads on top of each other. And this is also a great way to like build up the apex and the structure and all of that. So rather than doing like 1 very large bead and trying to get all of your application in that way, you could do like 2 smaller ones or whatever you find fit. Honestly, with polygel, it's better to apply less and build up, just because it's easier to always add more versus trying to remove product. Once we've got that polygel down, we are just working gently on top of that product using light patting motions and dragging motions. And again, lightly working on top of the product is the key. If you start applying too much pressure, that's where things can get kind of sticky and messy. But it's really just about using that patting motion. But honestly, even with this formula, it really shouldn't stick to your brush too much, even if you are using more pressure. As you can see, I'm kind of breezing through this application. This shorter length was just very refreshing to do. I feel like the application process was just so different, and honestly didn't take that long, even with the 2 thin layers. And as always, we are swiping the sidewalls to remove any excess product and just trying to make sure everything is smooth before we fully cure. That's the great thing about polygel, is you get the look and strength of acrylic nails, but you have unlimited time to work with it until you put it in your lamp. So when I squeeze that product out, I am concentrating it kind of towards the middle of the nail, just keeping the bead there. Then I start patting and flattening it out, dragging it, and using the corners of my brush to tuck into the cuticle area, and then using light pressure as I bring it down, but trying to make sure that that nail tip is fully covered. And I am fully curing between each bead as well. See, like even with this first layer, like if you wanted like a really natural kind of more sheer look, that's a great way to do that. But if you wanted something a little bit more opaque like I wanted, you can just add that second layer or extra product. If you haven't checked out our Polygel, I definitely recommend trying it out. It's definitely not a stiff formula or sticky. It's very balanced. It's very much so a medium consistency. I think it's perfect for beginners and more advanced artists. It also doesn't have like that grainy look that you see with some polygels where it kind of has almost like a sandy texture that you can see in the product itself. So I really think it definitely gives you as close as possible that acrylic look. And honestly, a lot of times, like when I'm out and about, people don't even realize that it's polygel. They literally think it's acrylic, which is definitely the goal. Now we are moving on to application with our non-dominant hand. I'm gonna use the same technique, kind of working in layers. And again, it's probably gonna feel a little bit awkward and take you a little bit more time. It's probably not gonna turn out as good as the other hand, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. We can clean up any imperfections during shaping, but just kind of stick to the foundations of using the same technique of using the gentle patting and dragging motions and try to remove as much excess product as you can. I really do think the bigger brush is what's helping me out the most here because as you can see, kind of compared to my nail bed, it's a pretty decent size and it has a good density, so it just makes it easier to control and apply the product as best as I can with my opposite hand. Because there's more surface area on that brush, when you go to flatten it or pat or drag things down, it's just gonna do it in a way that's making it a little bit more even and kind of flattening things all around evenly and covering more area, if that makes sense. But I know that for me, ever since using like a bigger brush, it's just made application so much easier. But we're gonna go ahead and keep repeating the same technique here. So I've applied that first bead a little bit higher up on the nail and I'm trying to tuck it into the cuticle area, into the sides, tilting my brush side to side best I can. But again, I'm not worrying about it being too perfect. Once I've kind of got that cuticle area down, I'm just flattening and gently dragging out the rest of the product. You don't want to apply too much pressure and drag the entire thing down. That can unfortunately mess up the application you've already done. So you want to be definitely very mindful of the pressure you are using. Use lighter pressure always versus more if needed, just so you don't mess up the application you've already done. And we're just going to show one more nail here, just squeezing that product out. Starting to flatten that out, using the corners of my brush to tuck that into the cuticle area, tucking my brush side to side, tilting it as needed, cleaning up any excess product as we go, and really focusing on using the corners of my brush. As you can see, the density and kind of shape of this brush really helps get into those corners and kind of get that cuticle area as flush as we can. There's kind of like a natural transition in the brush that goes from super tapered to dense, so it just really helps with that area. And then using the body of the brush as we drag the rest of that product down and just kind of clean it up, and we're really just making it fit to the nail tip the best that we can. This first layer is pretty thin, but honestly, like I said, you can always go back and add more. That's never a problem, but removing if you've added too much cannot be done unless you just redo the nails or you just shape them. Basically just doing extra shaping to remove, any extra product. I didn't really do it for this set, but you can also swipe your brush backwards and smooth out the product going the opposite way, or even more side to side. You can really angle your brush and kind of do the application in whatever way is most comfortable and works best for you. I was trying to make that free edge as clean as possible, but I will also show you during shaping how to kind of thin that out and get it to look crispy again, from basically comparing to when we first started the nail set and what the nail tips look like. But at this point, I'm pretty much going back and just adding a second thin layer to all of the nails just to add a little bit more coverage. And of course you have unlimited time to mold the polygel, but sometimes that can also be a little bit detrimental, just because then you start messing with the application too much. So sometimes it's better to just kind of call it and cure it, and you can clean up what you need to during application. Sorry, clean up during shaping is what I meant, which is our next step. So there is a sticky layer on the polygel once you cure it, so you want to remove that with some alcohol. You want to make sure you use a dust collector, wear a mask, use protective eyewear, all those things. The first step I'm doing is using a fine grit panna bit. This is a 5-in-1 bit, and I am just showing I'm using it parallel to the nail plate to clean up that cuticle area and the apex area. This is a fine grit drill bit, so I'm letting the drill bit do the work for me. These are all linked to my Amazon storefront. I always use these for shaping. I also like to use the kind of bulk of the bit to just kind of reshape everything and make sure it's even along the entire surface of the nail. I think that's why they call it a 5-in-1 bit, is, you know, there's so many different ways that you can use it. You can also use it for under the nail to remove any excess product, but I will also show you how you can do that with a hand file. But we are just making sure that cuticle area is nice and flush. You do want to be careful not to over file, and of course kind of even out your filing. If you're filing in the cuticle area, definitely do a little bit in the apex area and the upper half of the nail as needed, just to make sure there's a nice transition, that everything's kind of even and cohesive from a shaping sense. Usually people do this step last, but you can follow whatever step you want to. This for me helps a lot because it kind of helps me see where I actually need to shape more or less. And if you wanted another bit to use, this is a great one. This is the round panna bit. It's more of a coarse bit if you had more debulking to do, but I usually just use it for removal as needed or fills. Now we're getting our hand file ready. I always use an 80/80 grit hand file, and this is where the shape really comes together. These are so good for cleaning under the sidewall. A lot of times our nails look bulky, not because there's product on top of the nail or against the sidewall, but under the sidewall. So the more clean and crisp you can make the nails underneath, the better they will look from all around, really. It's just important to not file too far into the edge and create a notch, and try to keep your file as straight as you can. I mean, you're gonna angle it a little bit here and there, especially for almond nails. You don't have to worry about it as much, just because you can actually file right under the nail, and it's gonna help round everything out again and remove any excess product. For like square nails, you don't wanna do that just because it can kind of mess up how the corners look and stuff. But for almond, you can actually kind of file all the way through on both sides, and it's actually gonna help round everything out again. Then you wanna go ahead and file against the sidewalls. You're trying to put pressure where, like I'm showing my finger here, that's where I'm adding extra pressure as needed if I wanna taper things in more, make them a little bit more narrow. But really with the almond shape, the key is to make sure you don't over file one side, make one side too skinny versus the other. Whatever you do to one side, do to the other. Try to keep your file moving. It's very easy to accidentally make them like one side way more skinny than the other, and then the nail starts to look really off. I had that issue all the time as a beginner. Now we are filing on top of the nail, and this is what really makes, I think, the entire look kind of come together before we do the final touches. But we are just making sure that we, again, are seeing that cloudy effect just over the entire nail, but again, we are not over filing any certain area. This helps even things out in a way that a drill bit really can't do, in my personal opinion. So I would definitely recommend filing over the nail with a hand file at least once if you can. Now we're just gonna go ahead and repeat to the other nail. So this is kind of what I was showing or talking about here, is you can file right through to both sides there, and it's actually gonna help remove any excess product and make sure the sidewalls are nice and clean. Now I am just kind of analyzing where I need to file and round out a little bit more as far as the sides go, but I just try to do a little bit to each side to, again, not be, again, over filing one side versus the other. We still want the shape to be even on both sides. Shaping is my personal favorite part, just because it's something that I struggle with so much as a beginner. And I feel like I've really come to know the techniques that work for me to get the crispiest shape and shape that I like. So I really enjoy the shaping process. And now you can use either that same fine grit sanding band 240 grit or just a buffer to just smooth everything out. This is gonna give it more of that polished look, but we are not doing this to remove any product or actually shape. We are just doing this to smooth everything out. So again, you do wanna be careful. If you start to do this too much in one area, you can overfile even with the sanding band. You can also use just a buffer or a buffer with cuticle oil if you want that extra smooth, polished finish. This is basically our prep for nail art. Again, if we are using cuticle oil, we are gonna make sure that we use alcohol and wash our hands thoroughly to remove that oil. But I personally love doing both steps because it really gives you that very, very like polished finish. It makes it very smooth and easy to do the nail art right on top of it. So this is how the nails are looking after that. We're just gonna go ahead and repeat on the other hand. And when it comes to using your e-file with your opposite hand, the number one thing is definitely going to be to slow down the speed. So I'm using this at a much lower speed than I would on the other hand, just because I don't want to overfile any areas or accidentally cut myself or anything. But it does take some practice in getting used to using the e-file with your opposite hand. So you definitely want to make sure you don't use any bits that are too sharp or you aren't super comfortable with, like that round panna bit that I showed earlier. That can definitely be something that I personally probably would not recommend using on your non-dominant hand if you are not used to it. You could just use like a fine grit or medium bit, medium grit bit, like a 5-in-1 bit, and even if it takes a little bit more time, you can get it done that way. But we're just trying to take it slow here, be very intentional about what we're doing. You know, we're just cleaning up that cuticle area, the sidewalls, going over the surface of the nail, and just taking it nice and slow. If you can stabilize your hands against the dust collector or use your pinky to help stabilize your thumb, whatever it may be, that is definitely going to help as well. The hand file, you can actually just move your hand against the file versus the other way around. I'll show that here in a second. So instead of moving your file, you're keeping the file still and moving your hand. This works for some parts of the hand filing, and it can just be a little bit easier versus trying to maneuver like too much with your non-dominant hand. But otherwise, we are just following the same steps, trying to do it as least awkwardly as possible. As you can see, filing on top of the nail can be a little bit awkward, but you can again move your hand instead of the file. But we are just trying to do the same thing as slowly as we can, whether that's moving our hand, moving the file, whatever it may be. It probably takes me like not twice as long, but definitely a little bit longer than the other hand when I am doing this process. But I do try to follow the same steps for both hands. I wouldn't skip any certain step just because it takes me longer or it's a little bit uncomfortable, or being able to hold the file still may not be as easy. I would still follow the same exact routine just so you can get more used to it. And I needed to shape this hand way more than I needed to the other one. So even when I was filing on top of the surface, I did more than I normally would on the other hand, just because I had more product to clean up and more areas that had turned out a little bit bulky and all of that. To finish off, we're doing the same thing with the fine grit sanding band, just running that over the surface of the nail and the cuticle area. You can see even my e-file skips sometimes or kind of goes off of where it needs to be with the opposite hand, which is why using it at a lower speed is definitely very important so you don't cut yourself or anything. But ultimately, I was just very proud to do the other hand, especially at the same time, because that's something I never really do. But when you have the same design on both hands, that's always a very nice and special thing. Finishing off with that buffer and cuticle oil here just for that very polished finish. And we are gonna make sure we dust off with alcohol and all of that before we get into our nail art here. We're starting off with October Breeze, which is a very nice kind of pumpkin orange. I'm just loading up my liner brush, and the design we're doing today is just like these black and orange Halloween stripes. So I just drew my French tip and I'm filling in the rest with the polish brush. This is a 1-coat coverage. This orange is from our new Halloween collection, but these solids are great year round. And having a polish that's a 1-coat coverage, especially for Frenchies or nail art in general, is definitely essential as nail artists, because that's what prevents the French tips from looking bulky and things like that. So I was very happy with how these Frenchies turned out. They were just perfect for this spooky look. So that's our October Breeze gel. And now I'm just taking a black gel polish and we are just starting to draw these kind of angled stripes. I'm using a longer liner brush and I'm trying to apply more pressure with my brush because I wanted them to be a little bit thicker, but you just want to go back and refine them as needed. They don't need to be absolutely perfect. They will look fine at the end, but the cleaner you can make them, that definitely helps. It's just like following kind of a pattern. And then I used a dotting tool and just, again, that same black gel polish just to draw a little spider, just to add a little bit more detail, but I only added that to one nail. Super simple, 2 dots for the body and then just the angled lines for the legs. I didn't repeat showing on all of the hands because the process is pretty much the entire same. You just want to go ahead and draw the smile line for the French tip, fill that in, These Frenchies were so quick to do. I was honestly shocked because I've always struggled with Frenchies like a lot of nail artists, and they were just super quick with the polish. So I was very happy about that. And we are again using that black gel polish and longer liner brush. I want to say this is like a 16, maybe 18 millimeter brush. And I'm trying to follow the same kind of curvature with each line. It's kind of like creating a pattern, like I said. So we have that slight curve, but the longer liner brush is really the key because it's just gonna help stabilize the lines a lot more before we get to the last line, which is kind of like the smallest of them all at the very edge. Now for the opposite hand. So really, again, there's no really magic trick for it, but you just wanna make sure you use that longer liner brush. Mine actually got smashed somehow. But let the brush do the work for you. As you can see, the brush is kind of flicking out when I draw the smile line because I'm really letting the brush kind of do the work for me versus me trying to move my hands too much. And then just using that same orange to fill everything in, having quality products that work for you versus against you really help. Of course, having this one coat orange that self-levels really well made it super easy to draw the Frenchies and just fill everything in. I don't even remember the last time I tried to do Frenchies with my opposite hand, but I'm actually very happy with how they turned out. And then same thing for the stripes. These were definitely more challenging to draw, but I just took it piece by piece and went over the lines as needed. Even if that first line didn't turn out perfectly, that wasn't really the point because I'm adding to it as I go. I'm refining it as I go. So start your lines thinner and just keep adding to them, especially with your opposite hand. It's gonna make it much easier and it's a lot less overwhelming than trying to draw everything perfectly in one go. Like the same thing I said with the polygel application, you can always add more black gel polish, whatever it may be, but it's always hard to add less if you already added too much. But yeah, I just repeated the same design on all of the fingers and I really love how this turned out. It was a really fun and simple look for Halloween with just the right amount of detail. So I hope you enjoyed, and as I said, our Halloween sale is running through Saturday night. You can get 25% off with code YouTube at checkout, and I'll see you in my next video. Thank you for watching.